Elliotte Friedman will be a part of tonight's panel. You also know him from 31 Thoughts, the podcast, and the column on Sportsnet.ca. He joins us for 3 of these 31 Thoughts, brought to you by the next generation GMC Sierra Denali with the world's first available 6-function multi-pro tailgate. Welcome back to the show, Elliotte.
Good to be here.
Masai Ujiri, Like,
anything new?
Every hour the story's changing. We just got Woj and Zach Lowe just now saying that the price might be so steep for James Nolan that he can't reach the heights, so to speak, to give the Raptors the compensation needed to make that deal.
Keep going with the height joke.
He is. Have you heard James Nolan's short?
I got to tell you, if Ujiri wants to go, they're going to work it out. I think it's all comes down to, like, I've been around enough of these things to know that if he really wants to go and run the New York Knicks, they'll work it out.
That's the thing. A bunch of people are writing in right now, and I was going to read a few of the tweets, but they're saying, "Oh, it's tampering, and Sixero's he's gonna burn this place down if the NBA said." If he's going, he wants to go.
Yes.
If he's going to New York, he wants that challenge. He wants that smoke. He wants to try and build something that would allow him to be a legend
forever.
forever.
Scared of the smoke.
No,
He's not scared of that smoke.
Friedge is right again.
Yeah. NBA Talk with Elliotte Friedman here on Tim and Sid.
That was about 20 years ago, but yes.
Well, you were damn good then, and you're pretty good now at what you do. There's so many stories to hit on here. Obviously, Leafs and Rangers tonight. You're on the broadcast, no surprise.
Yeah.
We haven't heard anything official on Mark Giordano. Are you catching wind of anything? What are you hearing on that?
I heard hamstring injury, and they were just trying to determine the seriousness. And he was getting checked out today, and I'm assuming we'll get an answer tonight. I heard last night the worry was the hamstring. I don't think they knew exactly what it was, whether it was a pull or something else. And I believe that's what the imaging today was supposed to figure out. But no, I think he's going to miss a little bit of time. I think the question comes down to how much time.
Right, and what did the MRI end up saying?
Yeah.
So how does the defense market change given what has transpired over the last week in Winnipeg, in Calgary, and I've heard that the Leafs may be interested in a defenseman as well?
You may have heard that, yes. I think one of the names out there that I heard, and I wrote about him a little bit today, but a couple guys reached out to tell me I undersold it. And I think one of the names that's starting to get a lot of traction out there is Alec Martinez in L.A. He's a guy who can play either side. He's a guy who's got some experience. He's won before. He's under contract for another year. That really appeals to people. You get him for 2 playoff runs, not just one, or 2 seasons, not just one. And some of the names I mentioned, now Montreal was in on him earlier in the year. I don't think that's the case necessarily any longer. I think that kind of went away after they traded for Scandella. But I think there's a few teams. I mentioned Vegas today. I mentioned Nashville today. I think Carolina is potentially in on that one. And now that we know that once Winnipeg gets the divorce done here with Dustin Byfuglien, I could see Alec Martinez being on their radar too. So I think he's a name that's going to get a lot of traction between here and there. Now, someone I didn't write about today that I don't know if he's available, but I think some people are curious. Philadelphia has a lot of D. Shane Gostisbehere could potentially come back from an injury. He's got some term left. I think some people are curious to see. And, he's kind of been a trade rumor almost nonstop for 2 years now. But I think he's another name I think people are curious to see. Would Philadelphia ever do anything like that?
If Giordano misses any time, does that hike up the market for a defenseman and those who have kind of sat waiting?
Well, the thing is, Giordano wouldn't have been traded. So I don't know if it affects it that way.
But, if Calgary's adding a defenseman to replace Giordano.
I think that could potentially be a thing. Calgary's got to decide what that's going to mean. And then Calgary's also got to kind of decide what it's going to cost them to do it. Yeah. The Flames, look, they have 2 guys who are UFAs this year who play a lot of minutes for them, and that's Brody and Hamonic. So already I think they were looking at their future. But you can't replace Giordano with what's available on the market. But if you're suddenly looking at this, and you realize he's going to be out, what do you have to give up? Calgary's in on Tyler Toffoli, but that's a rental price, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe they don't do that if they're worried they've lost Giordano for a long time. But, I think that knowing Brad Treliving the way he is, if he'll get his results, he'll figure it out from there, and he's got a couple weeks to figure this out in terms of what he wants to do. But I just don't see him running and jumping into the deep end of the pool. It's not the way he does things. If anything, other GMs complain he takes too long because he tends to really think things through.
Elliotte Friedman here on Tim and Sid. The goaltending market, specifically in relation to the Leafs. Obviously, it's been kind of secretive with Frederik Andersen since the injury the other night, Friedge. With the trade deadline ahead, you're not going to hear anything from the Leafs anyway. It doesn't behoove them to give any real information on a timeline for Frederik Andersen. What are you hearing? How serious is this?
I think they're hopeful it's not that serious. Look, they got the Rangers tonight. They got the Ducks on Friday. They got the Canadiens on Saturday. All big games, but all against teams lower than them in the standings. I think they are hopeful that they can get through this week and kind of see where they are. I do think they're looking around. I think they're poking their heads out there. But look, Dubas made two things very clear. Number one, he's not making a deal unless he's significantly better. Number two, it also depends on the price. Like, keep that list up, okay, for a second. Let's look at some of these names. Ryan Miller, the last time he was traded during the middle of the season, he hated it. It didn't work out for him, and it didn't work out for St. Louis. Aaron Dell, that's an interesting one, but right now he's the starter in San Jose. He's playing again for them tomorrow night. Craig Anderson at the bottom of the list. He's really struggled this year. He's kind of lost his job in Ottawa. That guy's had a heck of a career, though. Corey Crawford. Like, the guys at the top, I think are interesting. Are you bringing Bernier back to Toronto? Georgiev, that's going to cost you. Casey DeSmith, that's going to cost you. Jack Campbell, that's a guy Dubas knows well. He traded for him in the OHL, and LA is looking to create a space for Cal Peterson, who's playing in the American Hockey League at some point. The Campbell one really intrigues me, but again, and LA and Toronto have made deals. LA's looking for young assets. That is the one on that list that intrigues me the most.
Does it not feel like if the Leafs make a deal, though, it could be a big one because they might have to move some salary? Like, all those guys, like you mentioned, Craig Anderson, I don't know if that's plausible, but it's $4.75 million. Like, yeah. You'd have to clear some. If Chicago trades any one of their goalies, that's another big cat. Like, I feel like if the Leafs make a move here, it might be for a defenseman and a goalie.
That's possible.
Yeah.
As long as we're just throwing crap against the wall, if we talked about Martinez,
right, both of those guys.
Could you do it? But the
Campbell
thing is, like, the one thing I do believe that Dubas has done over the last little while is he's kind of said, look, before Anderson got hurt, I don't think they were looking for a goalie, but I think they were looking for D. And we talked last week about some of the D they were looking for. Yeah. And I think at the same time, he was also looking, if we have to move some of our UFA D, CC Barry, whatever. I don't think, Muzzin's going anywhere. I think they're going to try to sign him. CC Barry, then we have to know what their value is. So I think he is in position where if he has to do a couple of different things at once, and I'll stop talking with my hands here, then I think he knows what he can do.
Elliotte Friedman here on Tim and Sid. Friedge, big picture on the Leafs and Dubas. Mm-hmm. If this year ends playoff-less, do the good vibes around Kyle erode a bit inside MLSE, or is he given a pass because of a couple injuries and this and that? Like, I know we're far away from that, but how does that play out?
Are there any free passes in Toronto, Sid?
Well played, Friedge.
Look, if this team doesn't make the playoffs, nobody's getting away unscathed. Nobody. I think that, I think if this team makes the playoffs, I think next year the pressure on people here is going to be enormous. Like, if you're asking me if I think Dubas loses his job if they don't make the playoffs, no, I don't believe that.
No, and I don't think that either. But I'm just saying in terms of, look, every GM has cover to a certain extent, whether it's a coach he didn't hire. He's played some of these cards now. He's dealt the contracts he's wanted to deal. He's got the coach he wants. I'm just saying, you add a postseasonless year in Toronto, the net
pressure
underneath
turns
him.
Up.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm not saying this offseason. I'm not suggesting that. But the margin for error here shrinks dramatically with him, does it not?
For everybody, yes. Right. You're right. Like, look, like, you know, what's it going to be like for all these guys next year?
Correct. Yeah.
Like, nobody's getting away unscathed if that team misses the playoffs. I still think they're going to make it, but I will, obviously, with the Andersen situation, you know, everybody's probably in a bit more. On pins and needles. Like, it's amazing. Like, last week, they go into Nashville, a really tough place to play. They play one of their best games of the year. They go into Dallas, a really tough place to play. They play a great game. Then they come home and they beat Ottawa. It's really a great week for them. Then on Monday, they blow the game against Florida. Andersen gets hurt, and we're back into mass panic mode. Like, the roller coaster is unbelievable. It really is.
Yeah, the injury and one period set Leafs Nation into panic mode once again after taking a deep breath after the 3 straight wins. One more that I just want to ask you about before I let you go, and that was last night in Boston. Elias Pettersson hit by Matt Grzelcyk. What's the talk around the league about that hit? I thought it was dirty. It wasn't penalized on the play. Like, what is everyone kind of talking about around the league?
Oh, I agree with you 100%. I thought it should have been a penalty. I love that Travis Green came out and defended his player. You know, Pettersson today took the high road. That's okay. I think it's the coach's job in that situation, a guy who played 1,000 games in the NHL, to come out and say, I can't stand this for my player. Let the player worry about playing, but make sure he knows that his coach had his back. I thought that should have been a penalty, just like I thought last week, like Giordano McDavid. I didn't think that was a suspension, but I thought it was a penalty. Yeah. And, you know, look, the NBA, we've always joked in the past, guys, you breathe on a star player, it's a foul. The NHL has always had the mentality that you have to earn your space in this league, and I'm, for the most part, okay with that. But I think your star players have to be protected from those kinds of plays. I think, you know, you got to send a message to McDavid. That's a penalty against you. You've got to send a message to everyone. That's a penalty against Pettersson. So I agree with everything Travis Green said.
Yeah. It reminded me of Berkey sticking up for the Sedins back in the day. Obviously,
Sedin is not...
circumstances were a little different, but...
English for punch me.
Cross-check him in the face.
I guess if Berkey was here, we could say Pettersson is not English for knock me into the boards. Swedish for knock me into the boards 3 seconds after I've lost the puck.
Correct.
Frege, I want to steal from your 31 Thoughts column on Sportsnet.ca with this final question here. What's worse TV, night 1 of the Iowa caucuses with no results, or a trade deadline with no trades?
Well, I would say trade deadline with no trades, because I'm sitting there trying to make stuff up in those moments. But I'm telling you, I stayed up late watching those Iowa caucuses, and I felt horrible for those people on TV who had to talk about nothing. It was awful to watch.
Yeah, if they had you and CJ, though, it would have been a different broadcast. You guys would have filled time with the best of them. No,
yes, it would have been worse.
Elliotte Friedman, great job. Have a good one tonight. Thank you, man.
Take care, guys.